Welcome to the Retail Reality Show.
Nina, I have to make a compliment. You are the best dancer so far in our intro.
Okay.
Intro jingle.
I came prepared.
Yeah, exactly. You came prepared very well. Thank you for joining our show today, the Retail Reality Show. Another interesting, very interesting, amazing episode today around the topic of sustainability in fashion. And I think in these times, talking about sustainability, some people might say, hey, we have more pressing things in the world. On the other hand, if I look at my kids and also the generations to come, I think they would vote against that opinion and see it completely differently. So we can't neglect sustainability, transparency, ethical considerations in our daily doing. And since the global fashion industry is one of the biggest emitters of carbon, for example, and other things, I think we have to understand where things are coming from and how to improve. And for that reason, I invited an expert today. I invited Nina Shariati. Nina, welcome and thanks for joining the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, pleasure to meet you. So I got to know you online and I read a lot about you and watched some YouTube videos. So I think you are a great addition to the show. Nina, where do we find you today?
Geographically, spiritually.
Yes, let's start with that.
Geographically, I'm in Stockholm. I'm in my apartment where I find peace and quiet, which I think it's important when I record a podcast. Spiritually, it's a really nice day today in Stockholm. It's a sunny day. So if you ever been in Sweden and met a Swede on a sunny day, it's always hopeful and happy. So that's my mode. Looking at a bigger picture with everything going on in the world, a bit different.
Great. Thank you. So I love Sweden. I love Stockholm. So I know exactly what you mean by saying that. So yeah, on my end, it's also very sunny. I'm based in Munich. And so I think we are on the same spirits and talk about sustainability, transparency, and a more sustainable future for every one of us. Nina, why are you an expert in that topic?
I always struggle when I get to hear that I'm an expert. I wouldn't see myself as an expert. For me, there are experts, much more expert in the topic. I think I'm more of a generalist in a sense, but I know quite a lot about sustainability in relation to business. Why the interest? I think I worked in a business for a really long time, and I was responsible for a lot of different areas. I mean, as we spoke about it, I worked at H&M Group for many years. And there was a moment of time when I started to become more and more aware of how my decisions were like directly creating impact. And that made me kind of want to educate myself. And once I learned more, I couldn't not do anything about it. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's where it stems from.
Okay. So in our preparation call, we talked about your history at H&M. You just mentioned it. You were a strategic buyer. You were in Bangladesh, China. So I think you covered lots of elements of, let's say, I wouldn't say root cause of the problem, but I mean, the supply chain where you were focusing on is one important element where it all starts, where you source the raw material, the fabrics, where you dye it, where you change the color, where you pick a producer. And I think that makes you an expert, in my opinion.
Okay, if you say so.
And you're the perfect person to talk about and discuss sustainability and the state of fashion in these days. But before we start, quick icebreaker. So we always do an icebreaker. What would be your pick? Buying new fashion or buying vintage fashion?
I mean, to be honest, I would say use what you have in your wardrobe. there's a lot of discussion about sustainable products, what it is and what it's not. From an environmental perspective, the most sustainable product out there is the one that is not produced. Let's be frank. And then the second best is the one you already have or your mom has. And then lastly, I would say it's important if you need to buy something, to buy something with being mindful of like, okay, I'm going to use this. I'm committed to using this for a long period of time, and preferably buy vintage. I mean, I understand you can't like buy underwear so that's my kind of thinking around it.
Okay, great. You just mentioned use what you have. If you look at the fashion industry, and I think also with those new players on the table from China, like Temu and SHEIN, I think many people are always tempted to not use what they have, but just buy something new because it's so easy, it's so fast, and it's so cheap. But we will get to that in a second. But coming back to what I said initially, I mean, if you read the global state of fashion from Business of Fashion and McKinsey, if you listen to the press and all the stakeholders in fashion, I think one thing becomes obvious and evident: fashion is a dirty industry. And you're coming from that world, that industry, understanding all the processes, supply chain very well. Maybe give us your view, your helicopter view on the industry. Why is that?
I think so. Fashion industry is it's an amazing industry. I mean, fashion is like the core of culture. It's the core of self-impression. It's core of zeitgeist, etc. And it's the way how we present ourselves, or we show up in different occasions and also like show what our mood is even, right? So it's a really powerful expression tool. But yeah, on the other side, it's one of the most polluted industry. Depending on where you look, it's something around 4 to 10% of total greenhouse gas emission is caused by fashion, and then it's very thirsty industry, and it ruins biodiversity, etc. So that's the core of the fashion, and also I think the biggest challenge is not so much, I would say, a fashion. It's more like our economical system, and it applies to any type of products, which is based on a system that is relying on infinite growth. And we live on a finite planet with finite resources. And fashion industry is also one of these industries within the system, which heavily rely on constant growth and constant serving to more people, and that means more resources are needed. And that loop, together with this need for like having access to everything faster and faster, makes it becomes quite challenging for our planet. You don't need to be rocket science to understand that equation is not matching. So one of the ideas out there is like, how can we decouple the growth from resource usage to make this industry, or like all the industries, more sustainable?
Okay. But decoupling, because what you're saying, the root cause is not the fashion industry, obviously, but it's the growth. And so now you can argue growth demanded by stakeholders or shareholders. If you pick H&M, I mean, the shareholders, they want return. So they invest in the company, they want return. So this is one source. And the other source is probably consumers, I guess, who always demand new things and want to refresh their wardrobe. And in economically challenging times like these, they want to pay less for that. Correct? Would you say those two?
I would say it's a perfect system, right? So the system thrives on growth, and you serve your shareholders first, right? So like the shareholders wants return on investment. So you need to showcase growth. And to do that, you need to have like a demand for your products, and then all the marketing comes in, right? So it kind of becomes this perfect system where one feeds the other one, and you can't really live one can't live without the other. So yeah.
Sure. So one of the things we will discuss later on to improve is obviously changing mindset of people. But what would you say, talking about the mass market? Because one of the big questions I have in mind is, if you look at the fashion system and you have the mass market, where we have players like H&M, Primark, and all those players out there, where you could have an impact changing the system. And especially those companies, let's call them fast fashion players or ultra fast fashion players, like the SHEINs out there now on the in the game, in the mix. They produce for that mass market, and they produce a very attractive designed item at a very affordable price. In my opinion, this never can be a sustainable business for the planet and for the company. So how would you see that?
I mean, are you asking me if the current fashion system is sustainable? My answer is no. Like I think that's the shortest answer, and I think you're asking a really interesting, important question, and it comes down to like, what is the price of the product doesn't reflect the cost of the product, and this has to do again with the economical system, because like the price that a customer pays in the shop doesn't include the cost of polluting the earth, or biodiversity damage, or polluting the air, or the fresh water that has been used. Maybe a little bit, but not to the extent that it should be. And these are all called externalities. So that's definitely one of the big challenges out there. And like the wages are also another aspect. So normally, if whatever you buy, whether it's a product or a t-shirt or an iPhone or whatever, the price you pay doesn't reflect the cost it actually took to create that product. And that's again with our economical system. When we set up the economical system, we were not aware of these challenges, and they are becoming more and more, I mean, easy to grasp. It's happening closer and closer. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And sometimes that idea of like, who is to change this and where to change it, right? So I think if you want to talk about fast fashion or ultra fast fashion, let's talk about ultra fast fashion. Temu and SHEIN, they're actually brands who are great at like playing based on the current rules of the game. I mean, they're not making anything up. They have just identified what the rules are, and then just they're following it. And there was a big shift in the 70s with Freeman reinventing, let's say, capitalism, saying that the responsibility of a business is to create results for the shareholders while staying within the regulatory frames of the country, and kind of writing off all the previous kind of ethicals and values and what is right and wrong, and just like dieting it down to return on shareholder investment, and just follow the existing rules. So with that said, it doesn't necessarily come down to the brands. With those rules, we should actually start asking or questioning the rules of the game that are set, and how can we rewrite them so that they actually respect the people and the planet, not just bottom line.
And from my very naive, if you stick with that point a little bit, from my naive point of view, you can do it in two things. One, you start punishing companies, and you put a lot of laws in place, like you have to reduce water by X every year, or you have to do this. You can't buy this fabric anymore, or you educate consumers. And I think one of the big education programs in these days, in my opinion, is the digital product passport that you can see that is now mandatory in the European Union, where you have to trace back or be able to trace back as a consumer your t-shirt to the fabric, to the factory, down to, I think, the raw material supplier. Am I right? And what would you say is maybe what am I missing to get out of this vicious circle?
Okay, so I have so much to say about this because, I mean, you know my background. I work with transparency, traceability. I drafted the first suggestion for EU Commission with Digital Product Passport together with others, of course. And I've worked for so many years with consumers, consumer behaviors, like listening to them, what they want and what they don't want. But honestly, I came to a point, I'm actually starting to get like I get a rash. I get like intolerant, and when it's constantly pushed towards customer demand. And normally, when talking about the customer demands, it's like when I started, it was millennials are asking for sustainability, like that, and then it was Gen Z, and now it's Generation Alpha, basically teenagers, right?
Yep.
Because they're also like the biggest purchasers or future customers. And the reality is, like, I mean, just leave a teenager with the choice of eating a burger every day or having like a salad every day. And that should give you direction. Like we shouldn't put all our like responsibility connected to values, future of the planet, health of the society, to customers or like teenagers for one thing. I think it's important that we educate, and I think it's important that from a regulatory or a brand perspective, provide the information for the customers to make a right choice. But I think that kind of customer demand has also been a tool for leaders, whether it's investors, it's like managers of big Fortune 500 or corporates or governments, to kind of hide behind it. Like customers are not demanding a second hand or a better option, so we are not gonna provide it, right? That's not how reality should work. And talking about digital product passport, yes, definitely. If you can like provide more information on the garment, saying, oh, this came from that farm, or throughout the supply chain, that can help the customer to make a better choice. But I don't see the core purpose of digital product passport or like that kind of life cycle data being that. For me, it's more what the industry needs. If we all agree that circular economy is the way forward, for that to work, you need data. You need standardized data so that, let's say, when it goes from the farmer to the market, they know whether or not this material has been produced according to certain standards, if it's organic or not, chemicals that have been used, but also like downstream, let's say if a reseller wants to sell the garment, for them to have easy access to data connected to the product so that they can be efficient in their services. And like one example is like, so circular economy is based on 3 pillars, right? So one is to reduce pollution and waste throughout like the value chain. The second is to create or prolongate the lifetime of a product, and that can be used by resale models, rental models, repair models. And the last one is to kind of create a system where you can actually regenerate that material so that it can be looped back into the system. Yeah, just think about a tree, right? Okay. The tree creates zero pollution. It's actually an important component in this ecosystem. And once the leaves or the tree dies, it becomes like it is used for new trees. So that's kind of the idea. And the last component in terms of like in terms of recycling the material into new material, you kind of need to know what has been going into that garment, right? And a lot of time, currently, the garments that you're wearing, you could just look at your tag. It's a mix of different materials. And for you to kind of recycle a garment, you need to know what's in it. And for different materials, you need to address it in a different way.
Got it.
So that's an important component to digital product passport, I would say.
Okay. When we come back to the original idea in question, I mean, your concept, the 3 pillars help a lot, and we will get back to that. But coming back to my initial question, you're saying we can't rely too much on consumers, because the teenager example with the burger, I think, will stick with me. What's your view? Is regulation basically the answer, to regulate companies of all kinds to get to a better world in fashion?
I think we need to do a couple of things, and I think we need to do them parallel. I think regulation is a really, I mean, if we are talking about our current economical system, regulation is the tool that is being used, like saying, okay, this, not this, but then you can continue grow, right? So, but I think regulation needs to also be very effective. So with the current global situation that we see, where let's say Europe has been leading this area, which I think, I mean, I have always been pro-regulation, but I think regulation needs to be also held accountable for how effective it is. And also what are the trade-offs there. I think we need to be limiting the industry with like reporting and steering, but we also need the other part where we're actually incentivizing better behavior, right? So that, I mean, that could be done with tax reliefs or just, there are multiple incentives. So that's one, regulation. The second one, we need to start investing in the innovation, in the solution. There are a lot of innovation out there that are struggling with being funded. And one of the challenges is that normally the first step for any startup is VC, right? And VC is like expected return of investment is like 3 to 5 years. And some of these solutions, they need long-term investment. And I think we need to also like start looking into how we invest and what type of investment models are out there to kind of support this shift. And also like we need innovation. I know we have technically a lot of innovation, but we need innovation in kind of system thinking, cross-industry thinking, process innovation, etc. to support that. It's not just having let's take digital product passport, a SaaS platform that you can feed in the data. It's also like, how do you ensure the data is correct? What is the process behind it that brings the data in and utilize the data beyond? And the fourth one, I would say, we definitely need a kind of looking into how we bring the externalities into the price to include the costs and connected the real cost of the product. And I think to do that, we need to be able to think short term, mid term, and long term. And here I think like academia has an important role. I think there are more academia coming forth with this, but I am still to see them kind of grabbing the opportunity, but also in terms of leadership, bigger voices within the leadership coming through to make this shift.
Got it. I mean, you said it in your last example and pillar. The real cost of it. I mean, the main question would in the end be, if we regulate the industry positively or negatively, you also mentioned positive incentives, will the consumers accept higher prices? I think that's the ultimate question, in my opinion.
No, I mean, just look at. So we are expecting, like, let's think about, like, we are talking about people who have being affected by inflation. They have children, like they are working quite. I mean, even if you go back to yourself, like the first thing that you look at is the do I need it? Do I want it? And then of course the price, and then you're like, okay, is this a good product or not? And this is like quite how to say, it's tested, right? We know that it is, and it's also like I don't necessarily see that the customers are willing to pay it, but I mean, that price increase can happen if it's like generally like what you see with inflation and people like when they don't have a choice, they take it. But if you want to put it on one brand or one region, that becomes difficult, because if you have, let's say, European companies like fighting against, I don't know, let's say SHEIN and Temu or whatever, then it becomes quite difficult to make that case in that sense. If the customer can pick between SHEIN or, like, let's say, another brand, European brand that is better, we know they are going for SHEIN. I mean, they are growing so fast for a reason.
But the ultimate question in the end for me would be, we regulate, you just said consumers won't accept price increases, especially in economically challenging times like these. So what's the solution? Do we need a radical change where we force people to change minds, or we simply increase prices, similar to Trump? He's just bringing the tariffs now on the table and people have to deal with it. I still don't see the solution.
Yeah, Trump might be the unexpected environmentalist. But listen, I think the solution is that we need to be able to have a couple of thoughts in our head at the same time, especially as leaders, right? So I think we always need to find a balance. I don't necessarily think that we can force everyone to like a new price point, but maybe a balance, maybe a trade-off. Maybe we can go so far and then invest in the in other parts. But again, I think it's a mix of like leaders taking their responsibility, investors investing in long-term solutions, and like academia or innovators coming up with solutions, and regulatory reliefs for like entrepreneurs that are coming up with important solutions, and for them to have access to funding and let's say tax reliefs or whatever. So I think it's a combination of things. And yes, customers have a role and they can utilize it. I just don't think it's just one thing or the other. I think it's a intersection of all these different components coming together that will make the change. And we need that change. And unfortunately, we don't see that change happening fast enough.
Yeah. So no easy solution, but I get it. Thanks for that. What you just said. When I double click a little bit, because I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with the concept, one of the pillars you just mentioned, circularity, I think is DPP is an important component of that, the digital product passport, so you can trace down the item and the T-shirt down to the supplier and the raw material. But can you maybe explain a little bit what exactly circularity means? And maybe also a good example where we can see that in practice as consumers.
Sure. So I think I talked about the 3 pillars, like removing pollution and excess waste, and creating products for longevity that can be used and reused. And the last one is to making sure once we don't need that product, that is being looped back again. And what does that look like in reality? In reality, it means that you start by reducing emission in your supply chain. That's maybe one of the biggest hurdles. And that could be done by electrification of the supply chain. I mean, a lot of them are still driven by coal in like China or gas in Bangladesh. And so electrification will be an important part. The second part is shifting to renewable energy source. So that's one step. Another step is to looking into overproduction that you mentioned. What is it, like 40%, something between 30 and 40% of everything that is produced so that the brand doesn't potentially miss out on potential sales. That means if they know they can sell, let's say 60 or 70 products, they produce 100 products to make sure that they actually hit the targets. And that is because of such an inefficiency in the business and in the supply chain. So imagine just by like tweaking that, by creating that efficiency, you could go down in like cost and have positive impact. So that's one part of like the circular economy, just reduce waste, right? Another part is like by reducing waste, you also need to start by having the end in mind. So one of the biggest challenges, as I mentioned, is that once you don't need the product anymore, you need to kind of pull it into different components so that you can turn it into new products. That is partly because of the immaturity of the innovation and technologies out there. But that also means that even when you start designing the product, you need to have the end in mind. So how can I design a product where when I'm no longer in need of it in the end stage, I can like put it into new products. I can recycle it effectively, so I can create a new product out of it. And the second pillar is in terms of like, how can I create a product that lives a long time, that is being used and create business models that supports that. So one is like resell models. Secondhand is one of them. So once I don't need the product anymore, I can sell it to someone else so that person can use it. Another one is mending. So once something is broken, you can actually fix it instead of throwing it away and getting a new one. I go back to iPhones again. Or like frying pans. It bothers me so much that too. Like, yeah, you can tell it's such a great product, but just because that Teflon is no longer working, you need to get a new one.
Because of the battery in the iPhone dying, you have to get a new one.
or the process updates that make everything like slower and slower.
Planned obsolescence.
Yeah, exactly. So you create business models to prolong the lifespan of that product. And the last option is, how can you you need to basically like copy the existing ecosystem model. So once you don't need that product, you need to be in a position where you can recycle that product into a new product, so that what we call waste becomes a resource instead.
Makes sense.
So that's the loop of the circular economy. And if you haven't looked it up, I recommend you to look into Ellen MacArthur Foundation's models. They have really great ones that kind of showcase what that could look like. Okay. And if we look into fashion, I guess you want to hear examples as well. If you look into fashion industry, I mean, we don't have a full system right now, right? So we have initiatives that cover like part of that, but we don't have that full system, and because it's difficult and it needs a lot of investment. But there are examples. I mean, we have rental examples. We have resell that is growing, with Vinted being one of them. Selfie being another one. There are investments going into how to kind of recycle that material so that it can be used as resources instead of that turning into waste. Like you have Syra focusing on polyester, you have Circulose focusing on recycling cotton into viscose, etc. So there are different options out there.
Okay.
Now I lost the question.
So maybe it will come and we'll come back in a second. But just jumping back what you just said, and maybe that sparked an idea. Because you said the 60 items example, and they produce 100 because they don't want to miss out on the potential upside for them, which is earning more revenue and money. isn't SHEIN an incredibly sustainable business from that angle? Because they create trends, they sense trends very early on, and a few hours or a few days later, they have the item in their virtual shop online, and you can buy it. And once they have it in their shop, they sense the demand, and then they produce it. And I don't know, 10 days later, it's on your door at your doorstep via DHL. Isn't that what's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing. I think the word sustainability or even impact is like everything and nothing, right? Everyone is some kind of sustainability expert, or you know what I mean? So I think let's just set that definition of what sustainability is on like a big picture. So sustainability is basically providing the current society with the needs that they have right now without hampering future society to do the same, right? So that means you need to kind of live within like a budget, so that you don't kind of take overuse, so that the future generation don't have access to fresh water or clean air or bees that provide, I mean, you understand it. But if you break down sustainability into that access of that circularity for them to produce demand base, yes, you could argue that SHEIN is actually doing better in certain areas. I mean, you could produce, let's say, 100 garments of organic cotton that nobody wants to buy. Yeah, but you can also produce like 100%, 100 let's say non-organic cotton that everyone wants to buy. Then you can argue that the second is more sustainable because there's a demand for it. And your argument is based on that. What SHEIN is doing incredibly well is that they are demand driven. They're not, but they have a lot of other challenges in terms of ethics of size. We have been focusing on quite a lot on the like environmental side of sustainability, not so much on the social side of and ethics side of sustainability. So, and then they airship a lot of, they airship everything, and they have been doing it in these small packages. So all of that combined leads to higher usage of resources, higher emission. They're also not very great at like chemical and compliance management. So they have their own challenges in many other ways. Sure. So I think the complexity of sustainability is important to keep in mind. But from that angle, they're actually doing quite well.
Yeah. And I mean, you said it, there's not this one size fits all solution. It's not an easy solution, but I think synchronizing demand and supply is definitely one. Yeah. And I think the established players can even benefit from the know-how they have, or get some lessons learned. The second question I had is because you mentioned resale. So Sellpy, I think H&M acquired them. You have Vinted in Europe being big, or Poshmark, ThreadUp. There are so many out there. But if you look at companies out there that doing that, either they do it themselves, or there are those second tier providers. They kind of offer white label solutions, tech platforms, but also even the warehouse where you ship the broken item, and then they fix it, and then they either resell it or they ship it back to their customer. Would you say that's a business model that could ever be, I mean, definitely it's sustainable, but is it also profitable? That would be one of the drivers probably to have a future in the corporate world. If it's profitable, would you say this can be profitable at all?
You mean a resell model?
Resell, yeah.
I think my short answer is yes. So I think something that we forget about, that when we started with the current model, the prices look very differently, right? So like the price of a t-shirt, I mean, the prices have been going down because of like.
When you say, sorry, Nina, when you say we, who is we?
People.
Okay. So I thought you were talking, you're putting your former hat on at H&M.
Yeah, that's good that you mentioned that, because sometimes I do that. I say we when I talk about H&M, but no, in this case, I mean like the general general understanding is that this is my opinion, that we forget that we got to the place we are with this efficiency of current system after like what are we talking, 150 years, right? So after spinning Jenny from 1800s to now, a lot has been happening. We have invested so much in innovation. We have invested so much in creating efficiency, and we have done an excellent job. It's just that it doesn't serve us, right? So now that we are looking into resale models, I mean, resale models need also access to that efficiency in supply chain. One of the biggest challenges is efficient access to now I lost the word, like feedstock. So what they sell, for that to be accessible in an easy way. So you can't just resell everything, and people are like giving away their, I don't know, their old sheets and maybe they're good, maybe not so much Gucci bag, but it's like a mix of things. So there is a challenge in terms of getting access to the feedstock that they're looking into. So basically the point I want to make is that, yes, of course they can become profitable, but like investment needs to go into creating that infrastructure for resale to become as efficient as the linear. Yep. Like if you just logically think about it, we have set up a system where you can, like a designer or a buyer can come up with the idea. They send the idea to a country like Bangladesh or China, like globally, like, or Vietnam or Turkey, and they get samples sent back to them, right? And then once they get the samples, they're like, okay, this is the one we want to go for. And this one, we want to buy, let's say, 100,000 pieces in 5 different colors. And they are sourcing that, producing that, shipping it globally, while for us to just sell an existing product is less that costs us more. I mean, that's a system conversation we need to have. It's not so much resell profitable or not. It's just like, how much are we willing to invest in that infrastructure in the way that we have done in the linear one?
Yeah, maybe that's also the wrong question. The question would be too narrow to ask, is resale profitable? If you look at it through that
yeah.
angle.
I think maybe the bigger challenge is that if you want to, let's just take CO2 emission or greenhouse gas emission. For a company to say we are better from a CO2 emission perspective because we are investing in resale, that means they should say no to linear growth. Right? And no company is doing that right now. Everyone see resell as an growth opportunity on top of whatever they see in the linear model. So I think, again, we need to be able to long-term reimagine our economical system for this to work. We can do a lot of things short-term. We can do great things mid-term, but we also need to have that long-term view of like, okay, how are we redesigning this model system so that it actually creates space for us to do good without compromising like our core existence.
Who needs to start this this push, this dialogue, this initiative?
I think anyone in a position of power should take this opportunity. And I think more and more, as we learn more, as leaders educate themselves, they understand the true risks that comes with this. So we are talking about, let's take climate change as an example. If like the result of it from a people perspective means that you might have less people who can produce and less people who can consume, right? Because of displacement and the effect that it will have in the regions with the majority of population in the future of a young population. So that's from the people perspective. And on the and from a resource perspective, that means that a direct threat to your just raw material and what resources you need to actually create a business with, whether it's cotton, or if it's rare minerals, or if it's, I don't know, fresh water. I mean, these are like clear risks for a business, and any long-term investor understands that you can't, if even within current system, it doesn't make sense not to take that in account, right? So I think anyone who has an in a position of investing, anyone who's top leader within a company, anyone who's in a position of political power in governments, I mean, leadership comes with that, right? If you're a leader, you should take your responsibility.
Yep. So if you're call to action, if you're a CEO of a large multinational, if you're a politician or a venture capitalist who wants to change the world, this is your call to action.
Yeah, and I also want to say, like, let's say if you're a CEO, you always work with trade-offs, right? You always work with risks and opportunities and trade-offs. And I think the first thing I would suggest for them to do as a call for action, just start by educating yourself and learn as much as possible around the topic, and also bring in people who are system thinkers. And I don't mean necessarily like sustainability experts or, I don't know, like a business consultant, or people who can actually think bigger picture and understand the interconnectivity of different areas. You can't address this challenge by like looking in silos. You need system thinkers. And I think once you have that, you can find a balance in that trade-off in short term to find that. I'm sure you can find that trade-off where you can move the needle yet stay profitable. And once you have done that, I would suggest, and this also comes as a business opportunity, right? You can use that to kind of engage with legislators, you can engage with academia, you can engage with investors to see how might you bring them on board so that they can support your long-term vision. So that would be my call to action.
So like in every retail reality show, we ask our guests to give an advice to a fashion CEO. You've just done that before I even asked the question. So I think very, very insightful. Thank you for that. If you're a CEO out there and you want to find those system thinkers, call Nina, because you have a business. I mean, you
can reach me at +46. Just kidding.
Yeah, I think those companies need help, and like you said, system thinkers might be a part of the solution, plus many more. Nina, thank you. That was very insightful. Great conversation. I learned a lot of new things and new perspectives.
Thank you. I'm happy to hear that. Sometimes I'm like, am I like floating out, or it doesn't make sense? But yeah, it was a great conversation. I really enjoyed your questions.
Great, thank you. Have a nice day and greetings to Stockholm.
Likewise. Bye.